before 1990s, there's no one called themselves constructivist, and constructivism did not exist in this discipline, international relations. But starting from 1990s, particularly after the millennium, that is after 2000, constructivism is one of the most prominent school of international relations. Nowadays in Europe, and also particularly in Europe, yes, Europe, constructivism is even more popular than realism. In America, you can say half-half, or better say they're equal in their influence. They're equally influenced, constructivists, and also those kind of realists. And of course, China. In China, constructivism is not that popular because, as I mentioned when I taught you realism, the most influential international relations school is realism. However, constructivism is also rising in China. Then, okay, what is constructivism? I give you two banknotes. Of course, yes, still you can say there are two banknotes. Then, if you go to the supermarket, will you use these banknotes to buy some food in the supermarket? Of course not. You must use these banknotes. However, if you paid monopoly, will you say, okay, I use $100 to buy, say, a piece of land? Use this banknotes. Lots of laughs if you do so. You must use these banknotes. Then, why? They're both banknotes. But why sometimes this banknotes is, or better say, most of the time this banknotes is more useful than this banknotes. But when you pay monopoly, this banknotes is the only currency that you can use in paying monopoly, but not this one. Why? Why sometimes? Why most of the time this banknotes is more useful, but this banknotes is useful only in one occasion, that is playing monopoly. But physically, there are two pieces of papers with some paintings on top of it. Physically, these two banknotes have no difference. But why? Most of the time, these banknotes can help you to buy something. You can use these banknotes to buy something, and you cannot use these banknotes to buy something most of the time, except playing monopoly. It's because we give meaning to these two pieces of papers. Social fact is like that. Social fact without meaning is meaningless. Social fact, depends on how people give meaning to the social facts. Then the social facts is meaningful if we give meaning to them. Okay, he is the founder of constructivism. His name is called Alexander Vance. He is the founder of constructivism, the school of thought. When he found this school of thought, in this in the journal paper, which you can say laid the foundation of constructivism, he asked very, very you can say inspiring questions. He asked, 500 British nuclear weapons are less threatening to the United States than 5 North Korean nuclear weapons. Yes, that's a good question. Realism. States strive for power and wealth. Then, if a state with powers that can turn to be threats to you, then you should be. Then a state should fear that state. So, British have 500 nuclear weapons. Then, of course, in terms of power, it is more powerful than North Korea. But why we have never seen we have never witnessed U.S. to say execute some policies to force British to destroy all its nuclear weapons, but North Korea just 5 nuclear weapons. U.S. executes a lot of policies to force North Korea to destroy those 5 nuclear weapons. Why? The main reason is because, of course, Britain is a friend of USA. North Korea is an enemy to the USA. Then, very tricky. Why British is a fan of USA? Why North Korea is an enemy of USA? We'll go to it later. But think about this. This is the foundation of constructivism. That is, social facts is not always out there. Social facts, they emphasize on the social and relational construction of what state and what they want. Because British and Americans, they have a long friendship. So American a lot afraid of 500 British nuclear weapons. However, North Korea and USA construct a very hostile relations. So, US afraid of the 5 North Korean nuclear weapons. That's the reason. So, even with this so-called material, these 2 materials, the components is the same. However, American is afraid of North Korea processing nuclear weapons, but American is not afraid of British possessing nuclear weapons. Okay, back to go to the reason for the rise of constructivism. The first reason is the collapse of the Soviet Union. The collapse of the Soviet Union, of course, the beginning of the collapse of the Soviet Union can trace back to 1979, when the Soviet Union lost in the Afghanistan war in Afghanistan. Then 1986, Chernobyl, the so-called the destruction of a nuclear plant in Soviet Union. It's a further event that another event that you can say destroyed the legitimacy of the Soviet Union. However, even till 1986, when a person talked to a political scientist or international relations scholar and told him that, okay, 5 years later, Soviet Union will collapse, then the international relations scholar and political scientists will just say, "Oh, this is crazy. It cannot happen." However, really 5 years later, Soviet Union collapsed. No international relations scholar and political scientist predicts that event. Of course, a lot of some political scientists and some international relations scholars consider that Soviet Union had been declining since 1980s. They predict that. The Soviet Union has been declining. However, none of them predict that Soviet Union would have collapsed so soon. Then the big reason, the main question is why? Why all political scientists and international relations scholars cannot predict this dramatic event? Why? And secondly, the end of Cold War marks the coming of the so-called unipolar system, in which US is the only superpower. Then, according to realists, the balance of power this theory, states must balance against the United States. However, to the shock of rulers, states do not balance against USA, and they would like to try to modify the balance of power theories by why there's no balance of power against US by mentioning some so-called excuse like the existence of nuclear weapons, and also to modify this theory by introduction of idea called soft balancing. However, this you can still cannot successfully explain why US can why no state balance against US. Well, it's unsuccessful. It's still a big question. Why? The quick question is there any problem concerning the balance of power this theory? Or even the whole realist school of thought is fundamentally problematic. So, and the second criticism is the criticism of positivism. Positivism is what you say is in Chinese it's called 實證主義. We just conduct the social scientists who adopt positivism study social facts like physical materials. So they conduct a lot of surveys and then use like the opinion polls. Conduct opinion polls, conduct surveys, and also studying a lot of data, including say economic data, something like this. The most positive schools of international of social science, the school that the discipline that use positivism the most is economics. Just like it's economics. They study social facts like physical materials. Use a lot of statistics, which you study when you take the course on statistics. The big question is, can we study social facts like physical materials, or social facts are just figures, just numbers? Those figures and numbers don't have meaning for those positivists. So like Carol Lam, her support rate is just 9% nowadays. Then for those positivists, they may simply say, okay, Carol Lam is not popular, so she must step down. However, is there any meaning behind why her support rate is so low? Why? That's just the problem. Her support rate is low is a fact. However, for positive, that's it. We know that Carol Lam's support rate is very low. That's it, 9%. They don't want to go deeper to understand the meaning. However, for constructivists, they want to go one more step deeper to interpret, to understand social facts. So we must understand why people hate Carol Lam the most. Why 1 year later, she was, or maybe 1.5 years later, before, she was very popular, but now she was extremely unpopular. Why? We must interpret the reason, understand the reason. So we must use some kind of so-called in-depth interview or focus group to study people's interpretation of understanding of a social fact. We cannot just rely on number. We must go deeper to understand the meaning. That is that's why we have to conduct focus group or interviews instead of solely rely on some survey. So the reason is tricky, so we have to understand the interpretation and understanding. Okay, then what are the major principles of constructivism? The first one is called ideationalism. Ideationalism in Chinese is called 觀念主義. That is, as I mentioned earlier, we need to take very serious the role of ideas in world products. Social world, unlike physical world, in physical world, all physical materials are out there. They can exist independent of thoughts and ideas of people. Say the coronavirus. Coronavirus is out there. This is not something created by our mind. We do not create our mind. Our thoughts do not create that coronavirus. That coronavirus is something that exists out there. It exists. Even though we do not think about this, then people do not create this. This coronavirus still exists there. On the other hand, banknotes. Banknotes physically is just a piece of paper. Without we give the meaning to that banknotes, then that banknotes is just a piece of paper. Because we give meaning to that banknotes, so this banknotes is meaningful, is a currency. So, because social factor is not an external reality, it cannot be studied by some very scientific method, like survey, like just based on some numbers or just statistics to study social event. Social world is a world of human consciousness. Social world or social facts is we give the meaning to that. Without people's interpretation or construction of meanings to that social fact, then that social fact is useless. It's meaningless. That's ideationalism. That is, we have to study people's interpretation of social facts, rather than take those social facts as something out there, something like physical material, which exists forever. No, a banknote without a banknote physically is just a piece of paper. It's no different from a toilet paper physically. However, because we give some interpretation to that to banknotes, then that banknote is a currency. Or like this. Of course, ideationism does not reject material reality, but we have to. But the meaning and construction of that material reality is dependent on ideas and interpretation. A good example is here. Ideationism does not reject that these, we call them pencil. Why we call them pencil? Because we give them meaning. The meaning of this material is called pencil. We give the name to that material. Physically, this material is you can say, an object composed of carbon, wood, iron, and rubber. Why don't we call this carbon, wood, iron, and rubber rather than pencil? Because we give meaning to it. We give meaning. So this is a pencil, not carbon, wood, iron, and rubber. A very good example is for rulers, balance of power, particularly rulers, automatically exist. When a state wants to fight for survival, they will try to balance against a fact. But why no states balance against United States, particularly like Canada? US is next to Canada. US should balance against Canada. Why? Because we give some meaning to a state, gives some meaning to another state, whether this is friend or hostile or enemy. So A state will not balance against its friends. State just balance against its enemy. So Canada never balance against United States, but Canada will balance against China. Even China is far away from Canada because Canada thinks China is not friendly or even hostile. Not China, but let's say Russia. Even Russia is far away from Canada, but Canadian think Russia is hostile to them. It's an enemy to Canada. So Canada joins US to balance against Russia. However, why Russia and Canada is an enemy, not a friend? Then this is related to the second principle of constructivism. That is social construction of reality. In fact, for many older schools of international relations, including liberalism, including realism, they think that interests, identities, and norms are taken for granted. Say they take it for granted that people must be rational. People are evil in nature, and international relations is a projection of this evil nature. No, this school of thought think that interests, identities, and norms are shaped by social values, not purely derived from individual thoughts of meaning. People never give a meaning to an object, but all interests, identities, and norms are products of human interactions. International relation phenomena are products of human interaction, not purely a projection of human nature. A very good example is why a banknote is a currency, not a piece of toilet paper. Because when we use banknotes to pay for, say, some food, then the shopkeepers will accept this piece of banknotes, and in return they give some food to you. Because this human interaction, this process gives a meaning to that banknotes. So the banknotes, I personally give maybe a piece of toilet paper. I say, okay, this toilet paper can use to buy some food. But if the shopkeeper do not receive this piece of toilet paper, then this toilet paper can not use as a currency. So constructivists think that international politics is a world of our making. Interaction determines the relation. Interaction depends, like when you in a human-to-human relations, when your gesture is or your gesture is friendly, then to another, then another is your friend. If your gesture to another is hostile, then another is your enemy. Too complicated. Give you a good example. Why interaction gives some meanings. For instance, if you like to date a woman, then you buy some flowers and would like to give that girl, pretty girl, those flowers. If, as a gift, if the girls receive that gift and then give you a hug or give you a kiss, then you assume that this girl accepts you as her boyfriend. However, if this girl receives those flowers and throw it away, then you know that this girl rejects your proposal. She doesn't like to be your girlfriend. She doesn't want you to be her boyfriend. So this interaction gives you an identity. If her interaction is positive, that is, receive your flowers and then kiss you, then she gives you an identity. That is, you is her boyfriend. If this woman, say, throw away the flowers or reject flowers as the gift, then you know that through this interaction, you lost the identity to be, or you cannot be her boyfriend. You does not get this identity as her boyfriend. Okay. So, state-to-state relation is the same. Why a friend can get the identity of to be a friend of another state? Because some friendly gestures, for instance, like North Korea and Cuba, initially both of them was U.S. enemy. However, Cuba received the visits of Secretary of State U.S. Then this friendly gesture, then Cuba nowadays is not a friend, but and is not an enemy of United States. However, because North Korea posed a lot of hostile gesture, say test the nuclear bomb, this consolidates North Korea identity as U.S. enemy. So, okay. So actors do not merely react as rational individuals. No. Your identity. Another state's response to you depends on your identity, and your identity depends on your gesture to it. Just like whether these two persons, their relations depends on their gesture. If this girl reply very negatively to the boy, then this boy will never be her boyfriend. If this girl react positively to this boy, then this boy will be her boyfriend. Okay? See you in the next clip.